Nathan Fletcher, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, brother. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, thank you for your time, man. This is my first guest interview since August, I think. We done a couple of solo episodes and then we took a break, so might be a little bit rusty when it comes to asking the questions, which is why I'm going to start with some quick fires because I have them written out in front of me, so it's hard to make a balls of them.
Okay,
Sound good to
okay.
you?
That's cool with me. Let's get going straight away. Yeah, quick fire.
Perfect,
Put me on the
perfect.
spot.
Nice one. First one, who is your favourite fighter of all time?
First one that springs to mind is GSP.
GSP,
Yeah,
classic. Okay, what is your favourite way to win a fight?
submission. But I haven't got any knockouts yet, so who knows? When I get a knockout, maybe that'll become my favourite way to win a fight.
Is there a particular submission or will you take any?
I'd take any. I like rear naked chokes. I think that's the majority of the fights I've won have come by rear naked. But any just finishing a fight in general is nice. I don't want to go to the scorecards. I want to get that finish and get that rush of blood and rush of adrenaline. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but submission, rear naked chokes, what I'm known for.
I like it. Next question. What's been your favorite performance of your career so far?
Oh, that's a good question. I've two really off the top of my head come to mind. The first one would be my fight against Michele Martignoni on Cage Warriors. So that was my fifth pro fight, and just because of the adversity that I had to deal with in the day, I was very sick leading up to that fight. So being able to pull through that and come out the other end with a finish against a strong opponent, that was number one. And then number two was my last fight because it's what secured me a spot in the UFC, which has obviously been a dream of mine since getting into the sport. So those two stick with me as my
Nice.
favourites.
You said there about a sickness before the fight. Was it like a post weight cut kind of sickness, or were you coming down with something?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I had a bit of food poisoning. I ate something that wasn't quite agreeing with me, and I was ill all day. And then I kind of helped manage to hold it off though until after the fight, more so. And then in the back after the fight, I was being sick. I come up in a rash. They had me on all medication in the back to stop me from being sick and shitting myself, basically. So that wasn't a pleasant day, but yeah, I managed to pull through and get it done anyway. So it's
Man,
all
the
good.
amount the amount of stories I've heard of fighters who get food poisoning after their weight cuts. We had do you know Pierce O'Leary?
Oh, he's a boxer.
Yeah, Irish
Yeah,
boxer, lives in
yeah,
Liverpool or trains in Liverpool at least. But he we
yeah,
had him on the podcast back in August, and before his last fight, he went to Nando's after the wake up, and like in the dressing room before the fight, he was doing a couple of rounds on the pads, getting sick in the toilet, back
yeah,
more rounds of pads. It seems like a lot more common than people would think.
yeah. Well, it probably is down to like your gut not being able to deal with certain types of food if you've not maybe ate a load of stuff. Obviously, you're cutting weight in fight camp, aren't you? So your body's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
quite as used to the digestion. But yeah, it's not ideal right before a fight being sick every day.
No, definitely not. All right, sweet. Your next one then is what is your favorite sport outside of fighting?
Ah, that's a good question. My favourite sport outside of fighting. Growing up, it was football, but it's definitely not anymore. I haven't watched
No.
football in years, and I couldn't. If I tried to kick a ball now, my brothers laugh at me because I'm so uncoordinated. Growing up, it was definitely football. Now, I quite like. I'm into CrossFit, I suppose. A lot of my mates compete in CrossFit and do a lot of that. So go and watch them compete at the CrossFit events. Quite enjoy watching that. I'm pretty much all in on fighting though, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything else is kind of background. I don't pay too much attention to it. Um, yeah, maybe I need some new hobbies, lad, because I'm struggling to think of one.
No, you're all good. If we think then within mixed martial arts itself, is there any particular discipline that you enjoy the most?
Uh, I love it all, to be honest. Again,
Yeah.
I know I'm not picking here, so it's a bit of a cop out. But early on, and you go through stages of training. So early on, I loved freestyle wrestling. I used to love watching that.
Okay.
I'd always get up like Russian training center like videos of them all training together there, and then I'd watch all the Olympic games and stuff. Recently got into boxing a little bit more. Enjoyed watching actual boxing fights because I never really used to watch boxing. It was MMA.
Yeah, yeah.
Combat sports for me, it was MMA that got me into it. So started watching a bit more boxing and then jiu-jitsu. I love rolling. You can't beat just going in and having a nice chill jiu-jitsu session, getting some rounds in of rolls. So I love all elements of it. Right now, I'm probably leaning more towards the jits phase. I'm enjoying the
Yeah.
grappling sessions. So yeah, that's what I'll stick with for now.
Nice. Do you find that throughout training camps, or maybe just throughout training in general, like within a particular training camp, depending on what opponent you're facing, would you find that the boxing side of it is more interesting for one particular opponent than it maybe the grappling side for a different opponent, or what way do you kind of find that?
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't even necessarily rely on the opponent. I think it's just more on how I'm feeling at that moment in time. Now, obviously, if I'm fighting someone who's got a little bit better hands, then I'll probably put a little bit more emphasis on the boxing side of my training.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'll just end up enjoying that more because it's what I'm doing more of. But there's definitely camp to camp, you go through different stages of what you put more effort into and what you enjoy doing more. Um, my last camp was quite wrestling based, quite wrestling heavy because I knew I was going to take my opponent down. At
Okay.
the minute, I'm enjoying doing a lot of jiu-jitsu. I'm just trying to level up and get towards my black belt and yeah, just improving that area. Because another thing is in the UFC, like I'm a very good grappler on the regional circuit. I've got a lot of finishes, and now I've got one finish in the UFC. But everybody's pretty much a black belt, so
Yeah, yeah.
I want to continue submitting people. So I've got to step it up that another level now. But that's the aim. My aim as a fighter is to be able to compete with black belts in jiu-jitsu, wrestle with Olympic level wrestlers, box against world class professional boxers, kickbox against world champion kickboxers. I want to be elite
Yeah,
in
yeah,
all
yeah.
areas. So yeah,
The all rounder.
that's it. That's
I
it,
like it.
brother.
You have to change. If you start getting knockouts with your hands, you're gonna have to go from the Southport Strangler to I don't know what the Southport Serial Killer, something
Listen,
like
man. No,
that.
that Southport Strangler nickname. It sounds like a serial killer anyway. And I
Yeah.
I've never ever liked it, but I'm gonna have to adopt it now because it's stuck with me. And even in my last one
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the UFC debut, I got a strangle finish. So it's yeah, it's me now, and the Southport Strangler. So I think that's gonna stay.
That's it, man. Sometimes people choose their fight names, and sometimes the fight name chooses you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's the
Like,
way it should be. Your nicknames
yeah,
will get goes for you based off the fans and people around you and your fighting style. So, yeah, I don't mind. I'll finally accept the Southport Strangler. That is me
yeah,
again.
yeah. Oh man, there's much worse ones out there, so you done okay with that one.
That's true. That's true. It's not too bad.
No. Okay, last quick fire. What is your favorite cheat meal?
My favorite cheat meal. I'm a dessert guy, so sweets, anything sweet. I like a chocolate cake, like a chocolate fudge cake, a little bit melted, some vanilla ice cream. I like chocolate brownies, anything that's like a dessert, chocolate cookie dough, all these type of stuff. I know you said pick one. I've named about 3 or 4
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
but any
yeah.
dessert containing chocolate and ice cream, that's my go-to for a cheat meal.
I like it. A proper sweet tooth.
Yeah, definitely.
Sweet. Okay, let's talk then. So it's been just over 2 months since your UFC debut back in, it
Yeah,
was the start of September.
start, yeah, 7th of September it was. So yeah,
And originally it was supposed to be 2 weeks before that.
yeah, 25th of August or something. It was meant to
25th.
be.
Yeah, yeah. And then for anyone who's listening who wasn't aware, it was like 15, 20 minutes maybe before you were supposed to fight on the night. And the fight ended up getting pulled due to
Yeah.
some medical issue, I think it was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then rebooked for 2 weeks later.
Yeah. Crazy scenario, but I'll always remember my UFC debut now because that was yeah, a series of events that you can't forget. So the reason behind it was I had a staph infection going into fight week, and I'd taken the antibiotics, I'd cured it as I thought. But obviously, if you know what a staph infection is, it can leave quite a nasty scar and like a
Mm.
scab on your skin. So by the time I'd got to Vegas, there was still quite a big scab on my arm, and the athletic commission in Nevada, because obviously once you're fighting in the States, every sort of state is governed by a governing body. So it's not just the
Mm.
UFC that need to pass you for your medicals or whatever. You need to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
through the government um, athletic commission, and the doctors essentially thought I was still contagious and that I wasn't able to fight. So thankfully, I mean, in that moment, I was just like, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah,
Like
of
another
course.
bit of adversity taking this away from me. But then, thankfully, my manager got in touch with Sean Shelby that night, and we managed to push me back 2 weeks. There was another card in the Apex, so my fight just got moved, same opponent and everything, to the first fight of the night 2 weeks later.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I was over in my girlfriend's at the time of the fight, the night you were supposed to fight originally, and I came home early to go back and watch your fight. I think you were like the second fight on the card or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was sitting there, and the first fight had finished, and I was like, okay, Nathan's up next, whatever. And then I started seeing flashing along the bottom, like Zigomantis, I don't know a second name versus Nathan
yeah,
Fletcher cancelled. I was like,
yeah.
wait, what? What's after happening here?
Yeah, crazy. That my phone blew up that night.
I
Anyway,
can
all
imagine.
my mates back home and my family. It's just yeah, it was absolutely insane. But that's just how my career has been. To be honest, up until this point, it's always last minute. There's something. There's been many times on Cage Warriors where I've got so close to a fight and opponents have pulled out, or different situations have prevented me from getting in the cage. So
Yeah.
that was nothing new. I dealt with it, and then now the way it all works out, I'm happy that it went the way it did because I got the win in September, and now I'm in the UFC, so everything's good.
Yes, that is it. Let me ask you actually, because I think if I remember correctly, the night of the fight, you were both wearing tough gear. Was that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So were you not officially a UFC fighter when competing in that fight?
Yeah, and I don't think so. I mean, on the UFC's website, I'm down as 1-0 in the UFC because obviously my fight was on a fight night. It was a
Yeah.
fully licensed professional fight, 3 rounds. But obviously, it was also a tough finale spot, essentially. So we were supposed to fight on the finals, which were the 25th of August.
Yeah.
And obviously, it got pushed back. So they kept us in the tough gear. And I think Gigamantis has actually been let go from the roster. I saw on the roster watch his name has been
Yeah.
released. So I think essentially that was sort of a spot to see who's getting the contract and who isn't. So yeah, at that point it was all up for grabs. Do you know what I mean? So I think me going in and putting on the performance I did, and even getting a finish, secured my spot because
Definitely.
you like finishes. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that
I
was
do.
it was all to play for in that one.
Nice. So you're safe now. You're a UFC fighter. You have the contract signed.
Yeah. I'm all part of the UFC roster now.
I
So
love it. I
I'm
love it.
safe.
And if it's too much info, you don't have to tell me. But for the initial contract, is it like a 3 fight, a 5 fight? Is it fight by fight? What way does it work?
I think it's 4 fights. I'm not actually sure, to be honest. I should be more clued up on it all, but I just let me management deal with all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think it's 4 fights, but don't quote me on that because I haven't a clue. And to be honest, I know that based off how Paddy and Molly's careers have gone, no matter how many fights you're contracted for, it can chop and change. So if you're
Yeah.
impressing 2, 3 fights in, then you're looking at a new tastier contract. So I'm not even thinking like, oh, what am I on for this fight? I'm thinking just
Yeah.
go in, finish people, and then keep doing that. The money and other opportunities are going to come, aren't they? So
Ah, for sure, man. For sure. And talk to me then. So just over 2 months since your UFC debut, what's life been like since then? Has anything changed really, or is it just same old, same old?
it's literally the same old. Nothing has changed at all, except I'd say mentally, it's nice knowing now that I'm in a position where I've always wanted to be. So that's kind of good for just reaffirming that everything I've been doing is paying off, and I'm on the right track. In terms of actual day-to-day life, nothing has changed. Still go to the gym the same route in the car, still drive the same car, live in the same house with me dad and my brothers still. So yeah, in that sense, nothing's changed. But on the way to the gym now, I'm driving in there knowing that I'm in the UFC, I'm a UFC fighter, and I'm carrying that energy with me in everything I do because ultimately I know now that half the battle is getting here. I think. Do you know what I mean? And now I'm in a position where I can build a future for myself and really chase my dreams and have a go at not only financially setting myself up, but doing everything that I want to accomplish in the sport. Because on the regional circuit, there's so many talented guys, and only a certain amount of them get through to this world stage now. And I've seen it with guys who I believe could have maybe got the chance already and haven't. Maybe 1 or 2 fights
Yeah.
haven't gone their way, and all that. So it's definitely relieving, and I'm like sort of in a good place mentally now, knowing that I can build on from here. But other than that, other than my mindset, it's not really, nothing else has changed.
No. And are you so there's Paddy and Molly in your gym who are in the UFC.
Yeah.
Is it just you then aside from that, or is there others in the UFC as well at the moment?
Right now, I think, it's just me, but I'm pretty sure Luke's essentially signed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can safe to say you got the Dana White follow. He's 10-0. He's finished the majority of his opponents. So I think it's safe to say that Luke's there. I believe in the next year we're going to have a lot more guys. Also, I think Liam Gittins is probably 1 fight away. I think Adam Cullen's right about there as well. So and Shem also.
Yeah.
Shem, because he's on Octagon. I forget about Shem sometimes. He's not on Cage Warriors, but he's 11-1 and finished all of his last few opponents in the first round as well. So Shem, and the story, he's got the following, he's got the personality. I think he's a perfect fit for the UFC as well. So this time next year, we could be sat with 5, 6 guys in the UFC. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's very exciting times for next generation.
It is. You're in a strong position. So you're the third man or third fighter in next gen on the UFC roster. Are you the first man from Southport in the UFC, or has there been another?
No, yeah, I'm the first guy from Southport to fight in the UFC. Yeah, that hasn't been done before.
Nice.
Me and Liam Gittins were battling on the way up, and nicked him at the final hurdle.
Nice. You know, before, for anyone who's not for anyone who's listening, they wouldn't know the backstory. But we actually met when myself and Adam went down to the Next Gen gym to watch a
Mm-hmm.
sparring session, and you weren't training at the time because you were still recovering. I think you were training, but you hadn't started sparring yet because of
Yeah,
the leg break that you had. And we got chatting, and I recognised your accent was a bit like Liverpool, but it wasn't exactly Scouse. And I was like,
yeah.
"Where are you from?" And then you said Southport, and I had never heard of Southport in my life. Talk to me a little bit about Southport. Like, what kind of area is it? What kind of people live in Southport, and what's it like growing up there?
Yeah. So it is a pretty small town, I suppose. If you're not from the UK and England, especially Northern England, you probably wouldn't have a clue where it is. So a lot of the time when I go away on holidays and people ask where you're from, I say I'm from near Liverpool, or
Yeah, yeah.
used to be near Manchester, but I go to Liverpool a lot more than I go to Manchester now. So I feel like an adopted Scouser a little bit. You know what I mean? I'm not quite there, but I'm near enough. I spend every day of my life in Liverpool. So yeah, Southport's just a small town near Liverpool. We're about 45 minutes away. And the people are sound. It's similar vibe to people from Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? Similar to all the Scousers. We're just hardworking, friendly people. That's what I've come across anyway. There's a little bit of a stereotype with Southport because parts of Southport are pretty well off. So
Oh yeah.
sometimes they get called Tories and stuff. And also, it's got quite an older population as well. There's quite a lot of old people. I feel like people come here to retire almost as well. So it's an interesting balance. But yeah, I like it. I like being from Southport. I enjoy, spend my weekends here. I like living in Southport. Growing up here was sound. I've got a lot of friends who I've made from growing up here. I'm still, close with today. So it's a good, tight knit community. And I think another thing is when you come from a smaller town and you start doing something for yourself and achieving things on a bit more of a bigger scale, everyone gets behind you. So like all my friends from school, even people who I don't really see at all, I see them a couple of times a year. They're always checking in, messaging me, always supporting me for my fights. Always used to buy tickets when I was fighting on Cage Warriors. So you definitely get that push from everyone around you. Where I feel like when you're from a bigger city, people struggle to back other people because they're all kind of competing against each other and nobody wants to see other people do well and stuff like that. Whereas from Southport, you definitely get a backing. I feel like I've got the whole town's support behind me and everyone's just happy for everything I'm doing and wants me to get to the top of the sport, which is where I want to go. And then that's in turn doing something good for the town, do you know what I mean? And making everyone here proud. So yeah, it's a good environment, lad. It sounds. Other than that, there's really not much going on. It's a seaside town, full of old people. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it's
And
like.
it keeps you out of trouble anyway.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then you were saying earlier on that when you were younger, football would have been a sport that you enjoyed. How young were you when you started fighting, whether it was mixed martial arts or I don't know if you started with just focusing on
Yeah.
grappling or whatever it worked or?
No, yeah. So my sort of training history, I think the first time I did combat sports was I was about 14. I was in
Okay.
year 9 of secondary school, and one of my friends at the time, Kieran, was doing MMA when nobody else really was. I didn't have a clue what mixed martial arts was. I hadn't seen the UFC at this point.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just knew what fighting was, and I wanted to get good at fighting, not even for sport purposes, just purely to be able to defend yourself and feel confident. Like I was a pretty small kid, and I never, I don't know if it was a chip on my shoulder, but I was very conscious of conflict, and I was like, I don't want to take shit off no one, and I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
be
yeah.
able to back myself if I need to. So that was how I got into it initially, and then as soon as I started, I fell in love with it. I felt like, I mean, initially I got tapped out loads. You know what I mean? I got beat up. I didn't know any of the techniques. But
Yeah, yeah.
going back to my sort of sporting history, before I played football for quite a bit as a kid, was never really great at that. I did gymnastics from like the age of 4 on and off up until as a teenager, essentially. So I always feel like I had pretty good control of my own body, and that allowed me in other sports. I was always all right at everything I tried because of my gymnastics background. I think that's what kind of led me to have good control over my
Yeah,
body.
yeah.
So then when I started getting into grappling, and I think this is why I took to the grappling side of things more so than the striking, was because it just felt like the same core strength, the same balance, the flexibility required for moving your body in gymnastics is the same when you're trying to move somebody else's body in grappling. So
Okay.
I think that really my combat sports journey started at 14, but because of the background I had in doing gymnastics, I think that was really my first part of training and movement, which
Yes.
led to picking up combat sports.
That's interesting. You know, here, I think it was Lomachenko, maybe. I think he
Yeah,
was done ballet before he
yeah,
took up boxing.
yeah,
It's funny how you get like the certain skills in one sport which transfer over to another sport.
yeah. Well, that's it. See, I'm not much of a dancer, so my footwork has taken work for boxing. But
Yes, yeah, yeah.
if you I could imagine if you're doing something like even Adesanya was doing breakdancing, wasn't he?
Mm. Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you can see how those sort of sports which require good rhythm, good footwork, or strength and core strength like gymnastics can translate over to mixed martial arts very well. So I would say for anyone looking to get into or say get the kids into martial arts and to be successful, I always say that, like, say it's my girlfriend anyway, when we have kids, I'm going to make them do gymnastics for
Yeah.
a certain amount of time before they go into any other sport because I feel like it gives you a good base of being able to move and control your body well. So then going into other stuff, you'll pick up other skills a lot easier.
Nice. So then you were 14 years old when you officially entered the world of combat sports.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that at a certain point you fell in love with it so much that you wanted to spend your life doing it. Was there
Yeah.
any other career ambitions or other things that you were considering doing, or once you kind of found MMA, were you all in on that?
Yeah. Do you know what? I was definitely one of those kids who had new hobbies quite a lot growing up. So for a few weeks, I probably wanted to do a lot of things. At first, it
Yeah,
was be a professional footballer. That was never going to happen.
yeah.
Then I even tried my hand at skateboarding. So I would skate for a little bit, go down the local skate park. I wasn't very good at that either. I was fearless. I'd drop in
Yeah, yeah.
on all the ramps and whatnot and have a go, but the technique wasn't there again. I've had different hobbies along. I played the guitar for a bit. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be in a rock and roll band. I'm going to be a rock star. Like any kid, I had all these sort of
Yeah, yeah.
crazy dreams. But then the difference is where most people then grow up and like, right, let's get a proper job and go into society. When I found fighting, I was like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this one. So I think that all the other crazy ideas, I was like, I can actually run with this one and
Mm.
try and pursue it. So really early on, literally talking in secondary school, I was doing MMA and telling people in school like I'm going to be in the UFC, and most people wouldn't have known what the UFC was at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
And the ones who did said, "You've not got a chance, mate, Jerry. Come off it." Um, but yeah, I think I've always wanted to do something. I've never had like a realistic career path where I thought I'll do this or go into this. It's always kind of been, I suppose, well, it's living in dreamland, but it's not now because I've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
able to make something of it. So yeah,
That's funny. They say not all crazy ideas are great, but all great ideas are crazy. And it takes a certain amount of willingness to just be
yeah.
resolute and a bit delusional and just go all in on something in order to see where it can go.
That's it. That's true. So all my other crazy ideas weren't great about being a rock star or being a football player. But, there was no chance of that. But obviously, the crazy idea of wanting to be a fighter has turned out to be a great choice
Yeah,
because I'm doing it now. Do you know what I mean? So living the dream.
I love it, man. What age are you now?
I'm 26. I'm coming to the end of being 26 in January. I'm going to turn 27. So I feel like I'm coming into my athletic prime. Do you know what I mean? I feel like these years now, towards the end of my 20s, especially in fighting, I feel like your prime tends to be a little bit later on just
Mm-hmm.
because of the nature of the sport, the physicality. You talk about man strength a lot. I
Yeah.
think a good example is if you look at Paddy's career, where Paddy will
Mm.
be, I think Paddy will be 30 in January. Yeah, I think he's 3 years older than me. So if he's coming to sort of end of his 20s, 30s, he's really started to fill out and look
Yeah, yeah.
like an athlete now. So I feel like there's like a key stage towards the end of your 20s, early 30s in MMA where you're in your prime. So I think I'm kind of just coming into mine now, and it's at the perfect time because I'm just getting into the UFC. So I feel like
Mm.
these next 3, 4, 5 years will be where I go into my prime, and that's when I'm planning on making me title run and stuff like that. So yeah,
Definitely, man. It's fascinating though because you started at 14 years old. Now you're 26, 27.
yeah,
12, 13 years of just grinding, chasing this dream. Most people quit after, or you see people in the gyms who are trying to lose weight and they quit after 6 weeks or 12 weeks. But
yeah.
to grind at something for 12 or 13 years and never know if it's going to work out or not until it actually happens. Was there moments throughout the journey where you doubted if it was worth the effort, or were you always just so in love with the sport that you were committed to figuring out a way to make it happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I was actually talking to my friend Alex about all this before because it when you put it like that in the context, it is crazy because this is something where I've put over half my life into it, you know,
Mm.
12, 13 years of my life, and really, other than the rewards I feel internally from doing it and winning fights and whatever, I haven't had any sort of external rewards up
Yeah.
until now. Do you know what I mean? So even early 20s, mid 20s, still living at home. I mean, I still live at home now. I've only just started to earn a decent bit of money off winning fights. So it's interesting what has kept me so focused on pursuing this goal, when really, if you'd look at it for like results, the amount of work I've put in compared to what I've got from it, it's not quite stacking up yet. But like you said, the love of the sport's important, and I've never lost that enthusiasm. Like, I love getting up every day and training. And I've always said, if I could maintain this lifestyle that I live now, but provide for myself, provide for a family, take care of my girlfriend or future wife, whatever she ends up being, and the kids that I'm going to have, then I'm happy, man. So if I can do this and make enough to live the same sort of lifestyle now, and also look after the family, yeah, I'll be very happy. So that's kind of been my motivations. I love the sport. I love the lifestyle. I love training every day. I love getting better. I love testing myself. And I think if you remain focused every day on just improving and getting better, and keep that level of enthusiasm and motivation towards it, you can't go far wrong. And then now I'm finally starting to see the fruits of all that in my actual career, monetarily wise and stuff like that, and getting in the UFC. So yeah, it's been a long journey, and there definitely has been periods along that where I've thought, is this worth it? You know what I mean? Because we're getting 10 plus years in. Even sort of my pro career, I don't know if you know the story about how I ended up in the UFC, but I went 6-0 up from 21 to 23, so I had a good start being pro. And at this point, I fought for the Cage Warriors title, and in my mind, I was like, I'm going to win this, go to the UFC, keep winning, become a champion, become a legend, become a millionaire. Everything's great. And then I lost the title fight. I then had a couple of injuries to deal with, a couple of opponents pulling out on me, which led to me having 15 months out of the cage from that title fight. And then I strung together 2 wins from sort of 2022 to 2023 early on, the first quarter of that. And then again, I went a full year out of the cage before competing on Tough. And then on Tough, I broke my leg. So it's like, it looks now like, oh well, you know, he's there, he's doing it, he's 26, he's in the UFC. It's all a good story. But when you actually look at it, there's been months and months at a time of like dealing with stuff and trying to battle through it and keeping that motivation when it's not been going my way at all. Do you know what I mean? So it's very important to keep that. And I think what's got me through those tough times and kept me on this path is just the love for the sport. And like I said, that motivation comes from just enjoying it so much and wanting to live this lifestyle forever, as long as I can.
Oh, for sure, man. What a journey. And like you said, every journey has highs and lows. It's probably hard to isolate 1 or 2 moments, but if you had to pick what's been the highest moment of your MMA career so far and what's been the lowest point, what would you say those two are?
So the highest moment was definitely winning my last fight. I think just walking around Vegas afterwards with my family, my dad, my sister, my brothers, my mates from the gym. Adam Cullen was there with me, my coaches. Just walking around Vegas afterwards and like taking it all in, being in that environment and knowing like I'd got there off the merit of my fighting. I didn't want to go to Las Vegas until I went for my own career. So then I did that through the Ultimate Fighter and then through that last fight. So being there and like realizing it's the start of my dream coming true. Do you know what I mean? Really, I want to go on to achieve great things in the sport. I want to become a title contender. I want to win the belt and I want to go down as a legend. But the first dream I had as a kid was being a UFC fighter. And like when I realized that was now the case in Vegas, that was a pretty cool experience. So that's probably the highest point. And then in terms of lowest points, I think that, again, there's been a few of these as well. I could say losing to Dominic Wooding for the title, that was a pretty low point in my career because I'd never lost as a professional. I could say that the July afterwards, I turned up to London to have my first fight back after a loss, and my opponent never turned up from France. So the fight fell through. Then getting pushed back to November, I was supposed to fight Cameron Else, who was a UFC veteran. And I was thinking, okay, I've waited all this time, but it's a big comeback fight. That's going to put me right back in the UFC picture, the title picture. He pulled out. I never ended up fighting. I got pushed back to New Year's Eve. So all these sort of little things going on there. And then, again, string together another couple of wins, put myself in a position to be there. And then the Tough, coming back from the first stint on Tough with the leg break, that was also a very difficult one to deal with. Because, again, I thought like that was my opportunity taken away from me. I know you said 1 there, and I said about 4, but they're the ones that stick out for me.
No, it is hard to pick, and I think it's probably just more of an intense feeling when it's something like fighting because it's so primal and so real. But I think in life in general, you always remember the lows and feel the lows much more significantly than the high points. I think you only listed out one high point there, but it was like 4 or 5 low points that you could top of mind
Yeah.
just rattle off.
Yeah, that's true, actually. The highs tend to. I mean, that was a significant one because it's obviously getting into the UFC, so that's something I'll remember forever. But if you ask me how I felt after all my other wins in my career, it's hard to fully remember that
Yeah,
mindset.
yeah.
Whereas those low points, they sit with you. So it's that I can easily regurgitate them because they're still playing in my mind. You know what I mean?
Still keep you up at night. Like, oh, if only I didn't break my leg, or if only this didn't happen.
I
Or
know. But then you got to look at it as like I am where I am now because of all those things. So it's in the moment adversity. See, every time I go through something like that, I try and remember like you've been here before and it's gotten better and it's all worked out the way you wanted it to. But like it's so difficult in that moment to remember that mindset and be like,
yeah,
sort of take a stoic approach to it and be like, look, this is going to pass and this is happening for a reason. It's an obstacle. Maybe you need to learn something. Looking back on it now, when I'm in a good position, everything's going well. It's quite easy for me to sit here and say, you've got to. This is how you deal with adversity, blah blah blah.
yeah.
But in those moments, it really tests your character, and you see what you're made of in those times.
Definitely. And do you do any work with a sports psychologist or anything along those lines?
Not necessarily, no, but I have a lot of deep conversations with people around me, so I feel like that in itself is like having a sports psychologist. Me and my brothers get into it all the time on like philosophy and the meaning of life and why we're doing what we're doing, what our motivations are. My good friend Alex is the same. I always confide in him and speak to him about training, philosophy, mentality, and hard work, stuff like that. And my girlfriend's also really good for stuff like that. She and her mum actually. So I know my girlfriend's mum. She's a very spiritual woman and very like knowledgeable on dealing with sort of the stresses of life, but being separate from it and kind of observe it all and take it for what it is. But at the same time, you've got to realize that none of that is actually you, and it's all just things set up to challenge you and test you. But you've got to remain the same, sort of just a watcher of it all, observe it, and it's okay no matter what's going on, good or bad. So yeah, I've got a lot of people who feel like they are sports psychologists to me, even if they're not. That's not necessarily their profession.
No, I love it, man. I love it. When we were in Liverpool, we had Molly on the podcast and we were speaking a bit about mantras. And we also had Shauna Bannon, who was an Irish UFC fighter, on our podcast back in April. And she had her own mantra, which was "My best is the best in the world." Molly's was a really long one that I don't really remember, but was something to the same extent of, life can test me all at once, but I'll overcome whatever challenges come my way.
Yeah.
Do you have any like phrase or quote or something that in your mind you go to mentally when you're in those difficult moments to help you through it?
There's not any specific mantras I wouldn't say. I like a few quotes that resonate with me, and there's a really simple one I remember all the time is "hard work pays off." That was the name of Matt Fraser's book. He's a CrossFit athlete who ended up winning the most consecutive sort of CrossFit games. I think besides this Tia Claire Toomey, who's actually beat him now, a female athlete. But that is a really simple quote, "hard work pays off." But when you look at and strip it back, the layers of it, it's essentially saying like whatever you put into life and any endeavor is what you're going to get out from it. So when times are challenging and hard, I just like to think that no matter how much sort of difficulty I'm facing now, the harder I work, the more it's eventually going to pay off. So that's one that resonates with me. It's kind of cliche, a lot of them, but like life begins at the edge of your comfort zone, all stuff like this, like just little short snippets of quotes that put me back in that mindset of, okay, I've got to test myself, because if we don't feel adversity and challenges, that's where we die and we become comfortable and complacent. And that's just like you see it with human beings in general now, the sedentary lifestyle of everyone working at the desk and driving everywhere, Uber Eats food, all this. Everyone's like atrophying the muscles, they're not moving as much. Everyone's just like slowly dying essentially. I feel like the same is with your mentality, your mindset. If you don't get those challenges and constant stimulations and put yourself out of your comfort zone, then you lose that part of you. Do you know what I mean? And like, it's not comfortable. It's sort of like fills you with anxiety and it's difficult and it's not comfortable, but ultimately they're all the times that then pay off tenfold, and you feel so much more from achieving something after going through all that than if you just play it safe and don't. So yeah. But to answer your question, I don't necessarily have one specific mantra. You know what I mean? Going back to certain quotes that I've read and that have resonated with me.
No, I like it. And for anyone like myself out there who has never gone through a training camp, never made a walked into an octagon, stood face to face with somebody, What's it like in those moments where, okay, I've put whatever 10, 12 weeks of my life into this, I've made weight, I've made the walk, I'm standing here in the octagon, the bell is gone, I'm after getting cracked in the face.
Mhm.
What's going through your mind in those moments? Are you in a flow state? Are you panicking? Like, what's the kind of mental state that you get in those moments?
Yeah, I think the mental side of it comes like all before that. So it's the
Okay.
camp, the fight week, the warming up for the fight. They're all parts where you're very in your head and like you're having that internal conversation with yourself and trying to convince yourself you chose to be here, lad. You want to be here. This is what all the hard work's
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
When you're getting those feelings of like, what am I doing? Like I'm gonna get killed in front of all my friends and family. The build up to that actual moment is very much a mental battle with yourself. But then I feel like once you get in there and the referee says go, once you're fighting, it becomes a flow state then because you don't really have time to think about anything else. You're just kind of dealing with the stimulus they're throwing at you, and then you're relying on all your training to give those reactions that you've give in the weeks leading up to it. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's an interesting experience, and the actual feeling of being in the fight. Once you've dealt with all that anxiety of getting there, you're in there, it's unbelievable. That's why we love doing it. You know what I mean? The fear's gone, the nerves, the anxiety, like you're free flowing and you're competing and you're letting it all go from, your training in the years that have led up to that. So it's, it's a battle between putting yourself in a place where you can just be free and let it all come out. Whereas I feel like if you don't win those mental battles early on and the build up, that's where you'll probably be in your head and be like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
hesitant to throw here because I'm going to get knocked out. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
if you put yourself in the right headspace, you should be able to flow freely. And that's something I think I've become, not to blow my own trumpet, but pretty good at because I feel like I perform better in the cage than sometimes I even do in the gym. Do you know what I mean? Where I am just letting it all go and I'm not too worried about the outcome. I'm just reacting and dealing with it. That allows you to then perform to the best of your abilities, I feel, anyway, for me. So, yeah.
Oh, I like it. You have a lot of wisdom from life and from fighting. If I had to if I had to pick your brain and ask for, and it's an unfair question to ask, but if you had to give me the most important lesson that you've learned from your career so far, if you had to distill it down into one sentence you could write on a blackboard for a classroom full of students, what would it be?
Yeah, it's such a deep question. There's so many ways I could go. So I'm just going to answer what I'm feeling right now, to be honest, because if you ask me at different times in my career, I'd probably give you a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
answer.
Sitting in traffic on the way to the gym, there's a different
Yeah,
answer.
definitely. There's all different responses, but I think, and you can go either way with this, but the one that I feel right now is that it genuinely, this is going to sound a bit weird and a bit counterintuitive, but it doesn't matter that much. That's something that I feel has helped me perform better. Is that realizing the sun's going to rise the next day, regardless.
Hmm.
The people around you are still going to love you, regardless. As fighters, we all put immense pressure on ourselves. I think, to be honest with you, as human beings in general,
Yeah,
everyone wants
yeah,
to put the best foot forward and sort of give the best account of themselves because we're all kind of in this weird little game where we're trying to like get to the top and status and everything is important to us. And then actually deep, like, why are we doing all this? At the end of the day, I've got a short period of time on this planet. I don't want to fill that with like constant worry about how other people are perceiving me. And I think that a big part of fighting comes from that. You're like, oh, what will people think if I lose? What will people?
hmm
And the reality is, people are so worried about themselves and their own lives that if you win or lose, they'll be happy for you or take the piss out of you that night, and then they just forget anyway. So a big thing that I think as fighters, what would help you and in life in general is it doesn't matter that much. You enjoy doing it. This is what I want to make a living out of. So just go in there, give the best account of myself, and whatever happens, happens. It's kind of all decided anyway already. So um, don't put too much pressure on yourself.
I like
Ask me
it.
that in a few weeks right before my next fight, and I'll probably say something completely different. Like you need
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work with God. It matters so much. But
yeah.
right now, that's how I'm feeling.
No, that's the beauty of the human nature. We're complex characters, aren't we? Nothing is
Yeah,
straightforward.
yeah,
Nice.
definitely.
I have two questions left to ask you, and then I'll let you go and get some rest before your next training session. This
Okay,
one, if we think into the future, so whatever, 30, 40, 50 years, you've done everything you've set out to achieve. You're UFC champion, you're Southport's finest whatever product. There's statues of you all along the coastline in Southport. How would you like to be remembered? Like when somebody mentions the name Nathan Fletcher, what sort of words or images would you like to come to mind?
I think that what inspires me is people who are dedicated, work hard, people who are very driven, people who see it's difficult because there's such a broad way I could go with this. So I just want to I know these are such good questions, lads, but I feel like I got so many ways in which I could answer it. In terms of my fighting skills and how I want to be remembered by the fans, is somebody who was always chasing a finish, was putting on exciting fights, and somebody who challenged themselves, accepted any fight, sort of this sort of just game to get in there and show off the skills. That's how I want to be remembered, and that's what I feel like I'm like. I'll take any fight with anyone, regardless of whether or not I think they're a difficult matchup for me. I want to see how good I am, and I want to test myself. So in terms of the fighting fans, that's how I want to be remembered. But I also, if I can along the way, maybe inspire some people to live a little bit better and challenge themselves and get out the comfort zone and just give a little bit of wisdom, then that is also good. Because certain fighters, I've always liked Michael Chandler, his outlook. He's very much focused on working hard, discipline, stuff like this, and looking at it not just from like a sports perspective, but how to live your life by, sort of like more of a philosophical approach rather than just I'm doing it for the sake of the sport. So if I can be remembered for those things as well, that'd be great. Rambling in interviews and chatting loads of crap, that's what I'm doing right now. So just inspirational, hard-working, driven, and was ready to fight anybody and game to show off his skill set against whoever. I don't care whether they're stylistically a bad matchup for me. I want to see how far I can take it and what I can do with this sport. So that's how I want to be remembered.
Beautiful. A true martial artist. The last question, I promise it won't be as deep as that one. What's next for Nathan Fletcher, the Southport Strangler? What can we expect to see over the coming months?
Well, what's next for me is a fight as soon as possible, I'm hoping. So we're in November now, we're doing this. I said to you before we started recording that I would have liked to have fight before the end of this year. I don't think that's going to happen. So as early as possible next year, I want to get out. I know that they're looking at a Sydney card on the 8th of Feb. And the rumours are that it's going to be Volkanovski headlining it. Again, none of that's official yet. I'd love to be on that card. It's a pay-per-view, so that would be great. If not, they've just announced UFC London on the 22nd of March. So those two dates are sticking out to me right now. Feb would be better because I'm ready to go. You know what I mean? I'm itching to get back in there. But also a nice home crowd and that sort of advantage. Fighting in London and fighting in the O2 would be also pretty sick. So that's what's next for me. Just get me in there as soon as possible. Let's go again.
Is that one of the most difficult parts as a fighter, just not knowing when your next time in the octagon will be?
It is, yeah, because it's I feel like when you are gearing up for a fight and you're in fight camp, all these sort of things I'm talking about, I become my best self when I'm in camp because I'm reading more, I'm trying to journal, I'm trying to think about it at a lot more complex level than when you've not got a fight camp. You tend to just fall back into just existing and going through the motions and, you know what I mean, getting distracted by other things. So I like the pressure of a fight makes everything else in my life fall into line, and I feel like I've become a better human being almost when I'm preparing for a fight. So that's that, and fighters have spoke about struggling with that after the career where they had that level of discipline because it was like, every sort of 3 months, 4 months, you're getting ready, you can go into those zones, and when that ends, it's like hard to operate now. But right now I'm in a place of like motivation's super high because I've just got signed to the UFC, so I want to go, and I'm trying not to burn myself out. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's get me in there soon because I'm getting ready now. I feel pretty good at the minute. So
like a caged animal, we'll have to let you out soon.
That's it, brother. That's it.
No, well, Nathan Fletcher, I appreciate your time, my man, and I really am grateful for you taking the time in between training sessions to jump on and chat with me.
Yeah, not so, brother. I really enjoyed that. That was a great little chat. So thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it, man, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back in there and getting another finish, hopefully before the end of the year, but more than likely probably February or March. But whenever it is, I'll be watching, I'll be following, and I'll be supporting.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, brother. Nice one. I appreciate it.